Residents of Glen Innes can now consume a range of local information and news tailored for them in their town of 10,000 people in the northern New South Wales tablelands. The town faced the closure of the local paper Glen Innes Examiner in September, leaving the community without local news. But thanks to community support, Glen Innes News opened its online portal. And from January next year, a printed version of the newspaper will be available for free. The Wire's Martin Davis spoke with editor David Lewis.
A group of us got together and formed a loose association, held a public meeting and asked the community, look, do you feel that we need local news coverage? And the answer to that was certainly a yes. And then we discussed what it's going to look like. Could it be online only? Should it have a print edition? The end result was that we want a print edition, we want it regularly, and we want to have a focus on local stories, particularly about local people.
And in terms of finance, how did you manage to bankroll it?
Well, we certainly started with nothing. The bank accounts, a few weeks in, I think we're at 4 weeks now since we launched online, is looking a lot healthier, primarily by advertising sales. So we've been pre-selling ads in our print edition, which starts in January. We've also received some significant and very welcome support from some of the other local community nonprofits, so the Lions Club, and even individual donations. And we're now at a point where we can confidently say to the printers, if they're listening, we can afford to pay the first bill.
And the great thing about online is you can actually see where you're having traction and impressions. Exactly. What's worked for you? What stories have flown off the shelves?
And as you say, we're close attention to those statistics to see what sort of stories people want. Certainly, it is always stories about people as opposed to politics or as opposed to a controversial issue. Our top ranking story since day dot, since the first day we launched, is about a school reunion. And we put that down to the fact that there's so many people involved in that. People want to read about what their people they know or people they may know or recognise are doing. Certainly, there's been stories. There's a story that we ran recently about funding being cut from the New England Rail Trail, which has been a big project, certainly a controversial project here locally. There's a couple of very firm opinions and lots of people on either side of that. Even that doesn't even come close, within a factor of 5, even to the school reunion stories.
And because you're online, are you finding that there are also people who originate from Glen Innes who've maybe gone to the far corners of Australia or even beyond, who are now tapping into what you're producing?
Certainly, and they're even going out of their way to send us an email and let us know that they're there, which is great. We can see people looking from all sorts of places. The US, obviously, in the UK, Sweden was a recent one. Norway. We seem to have a bit of a following in that part of the world. I'm not entirely sure why, but a lot of them are actually emailing and saying, look, thanks for this. We can now see what's going on. We saw Auntie Elaine or whoever on in a story, and that's been great. The other thing that's coming out sort of increasing with us very quickly, which we're thrilled about, is the number of local people who are contributing their own stories that they've written. So we published one just the other day about the sad passing of a lady who was one of the first female pilots, and certainly the first female pilot in this area. And about her history. And that was the daughter of that person who submitted that. And we thank her for that. And we're seeing things like that coming through almost every day, which is just exceptional. We're so happy with that.
What sort of message do you think this sends for hyperlocal news, as you call it?
There's absolutely a market for it. There's probably not enough of a market if you want to become rich doing it. We certainly didn't go into it with that expectation. But there is a market for it and it is viable.
And in terms of when you go into print, that'll be in January. How important is that for you as well, that you expand into print?
Well, we did some market research before deciding that's what we do. And rough figures off the top of my head, we're roughly 80% of respondents to that research wanted a print edition. So we've also been speaking with a couple of other publications around the country that do online and print. One of them, strangely, I think strangely, it's probably not in their market, is one in Brunswick in Melbourne, which you would assume would probably do very well online, and they do. And one of the points they made, and we're seeing that will happen for us as well, is that the print edition and similar to theirs, ours is free. It's similar to street press, so there's no cover price. It almost acts like a flyer or a billboard to encourage people to visit the website where the more current news is. So at print edition will be fortnightly. But certainly that doesn't allow us to do breaking news on the front cover, whereas the website does.
And I'm just intrigued, if you're starting a newspaper in somewhere like Glen Innes, where do you actually have that printed?
We're going to be printing with a community organisation who have a large printing rig in Gyra, which is actually I couldn't tell you their population, but a small town roughly half an hour drive from Glen Innes. That's owned or leased by a community group down there that also does a similar publication to what we're doing. They determined that it was actually better for them to lease the equipment, but it's not being used all day, every day. So thankfully, they've been very kind to us and given us some wonderful pricing.
Glen Innes editor David Lewis speaking with The Wire's Martin Davis.